Well, good afternoon, good day, everyone. I'm Mark Johnston, our guest host here for Follow the Money Investor Group, and I have a wonderful opportunity to sit down with Marco Wutzer, who is quite an expert in the field of cryptocurrency, and this is obviously a topic of big discussion today. We look forward to learning from you, Marco. How are you?
I'm very well, and it's a pleasure to be here on your show today.
Thank you for that. Marco, I always like to start off these sessions, which is more of a sector overview for people at home that are keen and interested in investing in this area. Can you tell me generally what it is that you do in this sector so we have a sense of your background?
Sure. So I've been in the cryptocurrency space for 12 years now. So basically from the very beginning. And as the space has grown and developed over time, it has become my full-time gig. So these days, I am the co-founder and head of investment strategy for Second Renaissance Investments, which is one of the fastest growing crypto hedge funds in the world right now. And I also have a bunch of educational materials for the do-it-yourself investor. So I have a video course that is called Crypto Quantum Leap that covers all the fundamentals for beginners that are new to the space. And then I also write a crypto investment newsletter, which is called Project Serenity, that then covers specific investment recommendations.
Well,
So
it sounds
it's all things crypto.
all things crypto, and it sounds like a voice we need at this time, Marco, because as you can imagine, many of us are a bit out of the loop on what this sector means and where to step in, what to watch for. So I'm excited to hear some of your wisdom today. So by and large, for those of us that are keen on investing in various sectors but are new to cryptocurrency, is there kind of a 101 or an intro overview you can give us of what it means to be in the space of cryptocurrency? What does that mean?
Yeah, I guess it would be good to start really with a bird's eye view with the real fundamentals and to really understand what makes cryptocurrencies different. Why is this such a paradigm shift that really changes everything over the next 10 to 20 years? And that is because for the first time, we have now a new system where you have digital scarcity. So what this means is you as an individual can now transact directly peer-to-peer from one person to another or from one machine to another without middlemen. And it has the characteristics of being permissionless. So in other words, anybody can participate. There is no barriers to entry. And it's also censorship resistant. So nobody can interfere with the transactions you want to do. So the bottom line is it gives you self-sovereignty with your money, with your identity, with your data. And of course, this has very far-reaching implications.
Fantastic. Thank you for that overview, Marco. You know, when it comes to something that's brand new to many of us, some might be daunted or hesitant to step into the waters because it's newer territory. There's less of a history than, for example, the mining industry or marijuana industry. Cryptocurrency is more recent, I would say. I know it's not brand new, and certainly there's been a lot of evolution in the industry. So can you give us kind of a timeline, an abbreviated timeline on when this became something on the planet and where we
Yeah,
are
so
today?
yeah, that's a good point to start, I guess. Cryptocurrencies already over the past 10 years have been the fastest growing asset class in the world. That is not saying too much because it literally started from zero, right? So when the white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto first came out that described this new system that was in 2009, that was basically the beginning of this industry. And then for the first few years, basically it was just Bitcoin. It was super small. There were only like a few hundred, maybe a few thousand people involved. And it really took many years to really get going. And then only the last maybe 4 or 5 years, we saw really a Cambrian explosion of thousands of new crypto projects that do many different things. So the biggest product market fit that we have now is in the space of DeFi. And DeFi stands for decentralized finance. So
Okay.
the way to best understand this is in the legacy financial system, we have all the different financial building blocks, right? So we have loans, we have insurance, we have payments, we have stocks, bonds, derivatives, all these things. And now in DeFi, we are basically rebuilding all these building blocks from scratch and also some new ones. And so now you have these composable building blocks that do all these things, but they are completely permissionless and decentralized. So
Okay.
that's where we come back to the self-sovereignty of things. We're rebuilding this entire system in a completely decentralized and distributed way where everybody is sovereign with what they do. And of course, it's faster, cheaper, and so on.
Wonderful. Thank you for those bullet points. It gives us a better view into a sector some of us may not be familiar with. When it comes to investing in this sector, obviously we want to get as much information as we can to be informed before we make investments. This is a newer territory for many, building their financial future, their financial health. What are the key components, Marco, in your opinion, to look for? Because we're speaking generally here, which is what I love about this particular type of interview, where we're talking about the sector overall. What are the key benefits and disadvantages in this space when it comes to investing with cryptocurrency?
Well, I mean, the benefits obviously are the financial returns you can make right now. One thing is the self-sovereignty of your money. That is a big plus. But on the flip side, of course, it also comes with the responsibility that you're now responsible for your money. So you really have to make sure that you understand it, that you have the proper backups in case something goes wrong, right? Because there is no customer support you can call. You are responsible for your money. So it's the flip side of the same coin, but you get the benefit of being financially sovereign.
Mhm.
So in terms of the financial opportunities, I already mentioned that it's been the fastest growing asset class for the past 10 years, but most likely it will also be the fastest growing asset class for the next 10 years and maybe even beyond. If you look at the internet, for example, the internet is now what, 40, 50 years old, but really only in the last 10, 15 years, it has seen this exponential growth. And if you look at the whole crypto space, yeah, there's like millions of users in general that maybe own some Bitcoin or some Ethereum, but the actual users of the decentralized finance applications, they are less than 3 million right now. So literally 99% of all the growth is still ahead of us. Like this, the whole part of this exponential growth is still ahead. Like even now, 10 years in, we're still very, very early. And if you get involved right now, you're still a pioneer, basically.
I love that, crypto pioneer, as they say. Well, this is great, Marco, to get a bird's eye view, as you call it. Um, if we could do a bit of a comparison, and I'm talking general terms, obviously, but when you look at the stock market, we have history, and we're acknowledging that cryptocurrency is a more recent phenomenon on the planet. But with the stock market, we look back at history to say there was the crash of this year, there was recovery, the recession hit here. You know, there's an ebb and flow of what happens with the market. Is it fair to ask you your perspective on the industry itself with cryptocurrency in the time that we have had access to this, of the health of the industry? What are some of the key turning points or benchmarks in the world of cryptocurrency?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I remember very well, if I look back around 2012, 2013, one of the biggest concerns at the time was somebody coming in with a lot of resources and destroying the system, because back then it was still really in its infancy and so small that that was still very much a risk. Nobody really is talking about this today anymore. I mean, the whole space has a market capitalization in excess of $1 trillion and going
Mhm.
much higher. And it's much bigger and much more robust right now. But of course, all markets go through cycles, and being a new, smaller asset class, the volatility is much higher than in much more mature asset classes. So we have significant corrections. If we look at Bitcoin right now, in May, June, we had one of the biggest corrections ever with about 55%, that basically in this correction eliminated what was in 2017 at the last cyclical peak, the entire market cap, in a matter of weeks. But it just goes to show how much the space has grown. So it is very volatile, but as a speculator, this is of course a big benefit, because if you play this volatility right, this is how you make the big gains.
Understood. Thank you. There's some business mechanics and basics in there, which is helpful to ground us in the new territory. When it comes to the industry itself, we've done so many interviews, Marco, with key thought leaders in the industry of investment, finance, markets, and a couple of them out there have talked about their criteria, if you will, for investing in certain companies. And for example, in the mining industry, some of the wisdom that's out there is you look at the people. Where is the management of this company? What is the quality of their assets, whatever it is that they do in particular? And lastly, the jurisdiction. Where is it that they operate? You know, you can easily ground information with a mining company in a certain part of the world, where it's South America versus Northern British Columbia. So with cryptocurrency, what do we look for? What would you say are the criteria for us to be watching for as we make decisions on what's comfortable for us as investors?
Yeah, there is of course an equivalent in the crypto industry for that. And the way I analyze projects is according to four criteria. I call it the T4 method because it's
Okay.
starting with four T's. So the first one is obviously the technology. If a project is not doing something that is either brand new, that's offering an interesting big use case,
Mhm.
it has to do something at least an order of magnitude better to gain any real traction. So the technological use case and the implementation of the technology is really the core fundamental value driver of this. But then we also, of course, have, just like with any other startup or any other business, the team. And the team is, of course, just as important as the technology. You want to have like really A players that have a track record. Or another thing you have in crypto also is anonymous teams that is basically then a meritocracy where you can just look at the traction that they've already gotten with the code they've already built. So they're basically
Right.
just based on the reputation of what they've done already. So
Okay.
the team is kind of the second aspect that is very important. And then, of course, you also have to look at the token economics, because there needs to be a design in the project in the way all crypto projects to start with have a token, because it's part of the security mechanism that makes the whole blockchain system work. And if it's designed in a way that as the project gains adoption and users,
Mhm.
value accrues to the token, then it makes for a good investment. If this
Mhm.
is not the case, obviously it can have the best technology, it can have the best team, but it's not doing you any good as an investor.
Understood.
And then lastly, I also look at the traction a project is getting.
Mhm.
You want a project that is communicating well what you're doing, that is building a community, because everything stands and falls with the adoption from developers, from users, from ecosystem partners. So in the end, it's a business like any other business, and the business development aspect and the marketing is also obviously very important.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. That's a great overview. And I love the four T's. So that's something to take home. When it comes to comparing industries, cryptocurrency has its own unique environment. Obviously, it's tech based and it's newer, as we've talked about. What would you say when it comes to for people new here? That how do you compare regulation? I guess is my question here, Marco, because we have certain regulators in other spaces of investment in the world. How does that work in the world of cryptocurrency when it comes to regulation?
Yeah, in general, it's very important to understand that these are global distributed networks where really nobody is in control. So I
Mhm.
mentioned earlier they are permissionless and censorship resistant. So that means directly they cannot be regulated. A regulator can only interfere, let's say, on the periphery. You can
Okay.
mess with the miners, like what happened in China recently, which ironically is a net benefit for Bitcoin because it's now more diversified
Mhm.
and less dependent on China. So
Mhm.
you can of course regulate the exchanges, but you can only mess with the periphery. The system itself is completely permissionless,
Mhm.
and so if you want it or not, it's developing, it's growing, it's happening, and
Mhm.
there's no way to stop it. Now, if we look at regulation in different parts of the world, you have countries that are very strict. Unfortunately, the US, one of the biggest market in North America, is one of the stricter ones. And so you still have a fairly significant ecosystem, but there are lots of problems. The SEC thinks it's a security, the CFTC thinks it's a commodity, and like everybody wants to have jurisdiction, and it's not very business friendly.
Mhm.
And then we have the usual suspects that are more free market oriented, more pro business, and Singapore, Dubai, Hong Kong, Switzerland, like
Mhm.
the typical places that you would expect, that are just much more forward looking, that say, okay, this is a crucial new technology, and we want to be leaders in the space. We want to attract the brain power and the capital. And
Mhm.
it's just like with any new technology. If you look at Uber and Airbnb, like the sharing economy, those countries or cities that heavily regulated or even outlawed, they're just less attractive as a traveler. And in terms of the blockchain economy, the question is not where does blockchain technology interact with us. The question is more, where will it not interact?
I
So
see.
anything that basically has a database, 99% of the time it can benefit from being permissionless, censorship
Mhm.
resistant, and all these good properties of crypto.
Mhm.
So this is like an octopus that spreads its tentacles everywhere.
Mhm.
And it's simply a matter of like fostering that and helping that grow and becoming a more attractive place,
Mhm.
or simply I'm hindering that and falling more behind, so to speak, and
I
become
see.
less attractive as a place to live and do business.
Understood. Well said, and thank you for that. Can we go back just a moment? I want to ask this very clear question. What is blockchain? Can you describe that for us, please?
Yeah, a blockchain is basically just a decentralized database.
Mhm.
So if we take the first blockchain that ever came about, which is Bitcoin, Bitcoin is basically just a ledger for transactions. So the blockchain itself, the database itself, exists on thousands of computers all over the world. This
Mhm.
is what gives it the properties of being permissionless and censorship resistant, because you really would have to have at least a majority of this entire network to even manipulate it.
Mhm.
So that gives it these resilient properties. So in the case of Bitcoin, it's basically just a transaction ledger. So I can send money from A to B.
Mhm.
Now, the second generation of blockchains was Ethereum, that then basically added a decentralized computer to it. So basically now I have applications that inherit these same properties of being permissionless, censorship resistant, and peer-to-peer. So now I have a whole application layer where I have lots of different use cases that inherit these properties. And now, as we move along, the blockchains itself, even at the fundamental base layer, they're still seeing a lot of innovation, a lot of improvements. So
Mhm.
they are becoming faster, they are becoming cheaper, and they have a shorter time to finality. So, for example, with Bitcoin, it takes up to an hour to confirm a transaction. So
Mhm.
in day-to-day usage for paying a coffee at the counter, it's not feasible, right? The same if you look at the media landscape with social media, for example, you need faster, cheaper transactions. So this is all still happening, and then again, it's always opening up new use cases and spawning a whole new wave of projects with every improvement.
Fantastic. Better understood. Thank you for that, Marco. Curious your thoughts, because for those of us that have been investing for a while and we make our own decisions, we like to get informed, we do our homework, and then we pull the trigger on certain investments we want to make. When it comes to cryptocurrency, is there advice? Because we're not here to recommend certain companies or certain investments. We're here to help educate an audience so that we understand the sector better. So with that in mind, is there, say, a top three perspectives, or if we were to forget everything else, is often the old question. If we were to forget everything else from this interview, what are the top three things you would like an audience to take away today?
Well, the most important thing is to really understand that it is a paradigm shift, and that literally in the financial system, everything is going to change. And so that means the sooner you acquaint yourself with it, the sooner you get comfortable with it personally, the more opportunity you have for yourself, not just in terms of financial gains, but also in protecting what you already have. This self-sovereignty aspect is crucially important. I mean, you have an audience that is very familiar with commodities, so you know that why gold is so important. It's held its value over a long time, and these days with central banks printing trillions of currency units, you have to protect yourself. And with everything that's happening in the world these days, with all the regulations, this self-sovereignty aspect is crucially important. And then lastly, I would say, in order to get familiar with this, I know especially for an older audience, like all these technological concepts, they're often a bit hard to grasp. It's very
Mhm.
abstract
Mhm.
until you do it yourself. So
Okay.
I highly recommend that you can use any amount, even if it's $20.
Mhm.
Open an exchange account, get yourself a wallet,
Mhm.
exchange $20 for Bitcoin or Ethereum, transfer it to your wallet, exercise or initiate one of these transactions. And as soon as you do it one time and you see how it works with the wallet, how the transaction happens, then
Mhm.
you understand it on a much deeper, much more fundamental level. And then you see, okay, it's really not that complicated. And all that's happening in the crypto space, in the blockchain ecosystem, is basically just a variation of that. The blockchain might have different attributes, the wallet might look a bit different, but
Right.
the fundamental process, how everything works, is always the same.
Understood. That's really well spoken. And I think for those of us at this time of the evolution of the industry, it's great to get an introduction. I think, one of the things I can't ignore here, Marco, is your passion for this sector and this work. So what brought you to the sector of cryptocurrency? What drew you in?
I mean, I was always interested in digital currencies even before there were cryptocurrencies. I was involved very early with the digital monetary trust and with e-gold. So,
Mhm.
and being an anarcho-capitalist, once Satoshi Nakamoto released the white paper, in the beginning it was really hardcore technology nerds or anarcho-capitalists that wanted to see this sovereignty, this this completely globally free market that is something that never basically existed before. So it was a small circle of these kinds of people, but being in this circle, of course, I was one of the first to be in it. And so over the years, of course, I've profited handsomely from the space as it's grown and developed. So
Mhm.
for me, I would we have so much negativity in the world with all the scandemic, the lockdowns, all the stuff that's happening, and there's just so much bad stuff. And I want to help spread the meme of the second renaissance, because what I see happening is right now we're going through a really dark period if you look at what's happening in the world, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel, because once this technology grows more and a larger part of the population adopts it, and more applications are being developed, it will basically in the first renaissance we had the separation of church and state, and
Yes.
what's happening now is we now have private money. So over the next decades we're going to see the separation of money and state, and
Mm,
so there will be a globally free market with largely diminished power from governments, and it will unleash so much entrepreneurial force, so much creativity, that I really think that over the next decades we're entering in a second renaissance period where things will be really amazing. But we
mm.
have to get through this dark period first, and so I want people to understand that this is a good thing what's happening here, and the more people adopt it, the faster we adopt it, the better for everyone.
Understood. And again, passion comes through, and that's always an interesting journey when I hear somebody that's this passionate about a territory. Marco, thank you for that. As always, we recommend our audience do their own legwork, do their own homework, and you've opened a door here, I think, for many of us that we're curious about the territory of cryptocurrency. Is there anything else we've missed that we want to leave with today?
I mean, as a general introduction, I think that it covers all the important points. And of course, I want to invite everybody that wants to learn more to check out my website at marcowutzer.com. You can see my different articles, and also the different products and services that I offer. If you want to get involved, if it's something that you say, okay, this is really interesting, I should get involved with it, I should learn about it, then there's a lot of resources there for you to check out. And other than that, I think as an overview, we covered a lot of good points.
Beautiful. Marco, thank you for the journey. I really honor your passion for this territory, as I've said, and I think we've had a really good overview with some of the basics and mechanics to start to begin to understand cryptocurrency in the world of investment, which is such an important thing today. So thank you for your time, Marco, and we'll look forward to watching where things go for you.
My pleasure. Talk to you soon.